Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed the last few chapters. We're now on chapter 9. So Aisha's made it past the green line and the checkpoints, the soldiers, and is now trying to find her way through the city to try and get to the doctor's surgery to get the medicine her grandma needs. So let's see what is waiting for Aisha on the other side of the green line. I was so out of breath once the checkpoint was out of sight that I had to slow down. The storm had rolled on. I could still hear distant thunder as it moved into the mountains behind the city. Once or twice, as I trotted on down the deserted street, I heard a crash from closer at hand. Was the storm returning? Was it a bomb exploding? Or were walls caving in somewhere in the ruins all around me? The wind was still blowing hard. Even though I'd been hot from running, I was starting to shiver now. I heard a strange noise behind me and I looked to see. A gust had whipped up old blue plastic bags which were flying through the air like demented birds. Then I saw something big, round and spiky spinning down the street towards me. I gasped with fright, then laughed shakily when I saw that it was only the top of a palm tree, blown clean off its stump by the storm. I was near the centre of Old Beirut now. To my left, at the end of the street, I could see down into the vast open space of the Burj. I stopped for a moment, amazed. In the old days, traffic had crawled nose to tail round the edges of the square, and the paved centre had been crowded with people. Now, I knew, there were hidden snipers on the top of every building. No one had dared set foot in the Burj for months and months. There was something even odder, though, than the silence and emptiness. I screwed up my eyes to look more clearly, unable to believe what I was seeing. Plants were pushing right up through the tarmac. Little bushes and baby trees breaking up the hard surface as easily as if it had been loose soil. That glimpse of the great square, so desolate, made me shiver. I hurried on. The streets around me were changing. I was leaving the ruins behind. The buildings were still pitted all over with bullet holes, like faces marked with acne, but they weren't burnt out or falling down. Some of them still had glass in their windows. No one was around, but the tarmac had been swept clear of debris as if traffic sometimes came that way. And then I heard the strangest thing of all. The sound of horses' hooves, and above that, the whooping shouts of boys. "Come on, you broken old nag! Get on with it, you mother of donkeys! Do you want to win this race or not?" I dived into a doorway and looked cautiously round a pillar as the first horse appeared from a side street. It was an old creature, with red plumes tossing about on its head. It was harnessed to a little tanker, like the ones that came round our streets on the other side, selling paraffin for oil lamps and stoves. Latif loved those tankers. He was always running alongside them, trying to pat the horse. A boy was driving this one. He was looking over his shoulder and laughing. And then another racing tanker appeared, with another boy astride it. A second later, the two horses with their nodding plumes, the tankers and the laughing boys, had splashed through the puddles and disappeared. I let out a long breath. I've made it, I thought. I'm on the other side. Coming out of no man's land was the strangest thing, like stepping from a darkened room into the light. The distance between the frightening emptiness of the ruins along the green line and the bustling everyday world on the other side was no more than a few metres. I just walked straight from one into the other. There was life here. Normal life. Market traders were doing business all the way down the sides of the street. Some stalls were piled with fruit and vegetables. Others were selling china or clothes, toys, radios. People were walking about, doing their shopping, as if they'd never heard there was a war on at all. I wasn't afraid of any gunmen now that ordinary people were all around me. Instead, I had a terrible new fear. I'd been quite sure, when I'd made my plan to cross the green line, that I'd be able to find my way easily to Dr. Leia's surgery. I'd seen it clearly before I started out. The flower seller in his yellow shirt on the corner, the ice cream parlour at the top of the next street, the film posters on their hoardings above the door of the cinema. I couldn't see any of them. Everything had changed. And the biggest, the worst change of all, was that Mama wasn't there. I'd never been here on my own before. Mama had always been with me, holding my hand as we crossed through the busy traffic, telling me to hurry. And when I'd found Dr. Leia, I thought, or even if I don't, I've got to go back again through no man's land, on my own. I suddenly felt so lonely and miserable that I sat down on a step, still wet from the storm, and burst into tears. 10. What's the matter with you? I looked up. A boy was staring down at me. He was dressed in dusty old black trousers and a crumpled sweatshirt. Nothing, I said, before I remembered not to speak. Suit yourself. I thought you might like this orange, that's all. To cheer you up. My dad sent it over. I looked across to where he was pointing. Further down the street, one of the fruit store holders was smiling and waving at me. Thanks, I said unwillingly. I couldn't tell from the boy's accent where he was from, but his face was sunburnt and he sounded a bit countrified. There was a chance he wouldn't recognise my accent, if his family weren't from Beirut either. I sniffed at the orange. I hadn't eaten any fruit for a while. It smelled wonderful. You lost, or what? The boy said. No, I stopped, looking up at him again. He seemed friendly and ordinary. Well, yes, I am. I'm looking for Dr. Leah, but when I visited her before, I was with my mum. I can't remember the way. Dr. Leah? Never heard of her, the boy said. Wait here. He walked back towards his father's stall, his hands in his pockets, looking as if he wanted me to see how grand and grown up he was. I watched while his father shook his head and pointed with his chin to the stall